Hey everybody, have a hopefully short demo for you here today on authenticating yourself with Google Cloud Functions. Now, I'm going to put a massive caveat with this one that it is a relatively large pain in the butt to do this client side. So the demo I'm going to be showing you is from within the Google ecosystem. So we're going to be using a virtual machine that has already been created. And if you did one of the first labs where you set up a micro instance, it is perfectly fine to use that. But if you go down the path of wanting to run client-side scripts, meaning things on your own machines, your own servers, you're going to have to go down the path of generating tokens, doing the whole OAuth thing, and it gets very messy, very complicated. It can be done. I'm just trying to give you the forewarning that I probably spent a good solid 2 to 3 hours trying to get this up and running. Um, and I'm going to show you the easy way, quote unquote, as long as you're inside the ecosystem. I'll provide you some links in the description and in the blog post for how to do this manually. Keep in mind this does change from time to time, so what you do, say this year, might not hold for next year as authentication flows change, but just be aware, like end caveat. So what we're going to be doing here is let's create a cloud function. Now I've been showing you how to do this before with um, unauthenticated access, meaning that anybody could call it, but we don't always want that, right? Sometimes we want our cloud functions to be hidden behind a wall where only, ourselves, our coworkers, basically authenticated users can have access to these things. And the way that we're going to be doing it here is that we're going to be linking it with service accounts. So later on, when we get into security, we'll talk about service accounts, we'll talk about IAM and all of that fun stuff. Basically, they are just user accounts. They look like Gmail accounts, with a slightly different end tag. And we're going to tie our permissions to this particular account. And you can create multiple accounts for multiple services. We have a few defaults that we will go ahead and use. But just that's kind of how we will be doing things here. So as I talk, let's create a cloud function and we'll call this IAM demo for recording, since I called it IAM demo before. We're going to leave the trigger as HTTP because we're going to use curl to basically access it. I see what my URL is here, and we're going to require authentication for it. So we're going to leave that basically as is. And what we're going to be doing in one of the next steps is actually saying which service accounts have access to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And I'm going to leave this in Node just because everything I've been doing has been in Python. I'm fine with the basic hello world response here. Let's do hello world /n, CIS680 /n, just to get basically a little bit of customization here, but all we're getting is hello world out of it. Again, this cloud function could be really doing anything that can fit within that construct. So I'm going to go ahead and now click deploy. So while this is spinning up, one of the things that we have to do is say which accounts we want to have access to this thing, right? So basically, who is going to be authenticated for it. And I'm gonna put these links in the description and in the blog. But what we're basically looking to do is have access to curl this thing. Now to do that, what we have to do is to basically allow our cloud function to be accessed by the service account, right? I think I've said that 3 or 4 times now. And I'm just kind of scrolling through looking for the right block of code to copy. But what we have here is a gcloud command. So we're going to put this into the cloud shell. Basically what we're doing is we're calling the gcloud application and we're using the function specific information. We're going to add an IAM policy binding to our receiving function, which is the function we just created. Again, that's the cloud function name. We're going to specify which service account is allowed to call that, and then what role does that account have. And here we're going to say it has the invoker role, meaning that it is allowed to call this thing. Nothing else will have access to do that, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this directly into my Cloud Shell here. So we actually see this is deployed, which is good. And I need my Cloud Shell. Actually, I need two things. So let's double back 1 second. Let's close the Cloud Shell. So let me open this up really quickly to demonstrate it not working. Um, so we see here we have a trigger URL. We should not see anything when we click this, right? So it is forbidden. A generic anonymous internet account does not have access to, go ahead and access this thing. And if I were to go ahead, and I didn't have a terminal open, but let me pop that open really quickly here. I get this nifty little retro terminal thing going on. Curl. I'm going to paste that URL. I should see the same thing. Your client does not have permission for this. Don't get too excited about this terminal. I'm still playing around with colors and kind of nerding out on what I like my terminal to look like. But this is good, right? So no access. Random people on the internet can't just go ahead and access this without more details. But we do want to have access to it, right? So let's go to our virtual machine here. And again, this is something I created for class. It'll be deleted pretty soon, but you all created the same thing too. If you go into the details of this account and you kind of scroll down, you see the service account. Now, this is that thing that I was telling you about before. I'll zoom this in a little bit. Basically, this is the username that has access to this virtual machine. And again, I will delete this later on, so this account should disappear. Yours will look different, but it'll still be like a randomly generated type of thing. Again, you can create these manually if you want for your particular services. But what I have now is a service account, right? So let's go ahead and I'm going to copy this, open my Cloud Shell, paste that in here, and actually let me do this in a off screen, not in. Okay, so we are back now, and just kind of what I'm doing here is I want to type in the command, and I want to ensure that I actually show you what we have going on here. So I'm going to drop my service account ID. I'm going to copy that. And again, I want to use this add IAM policy binding call to set up the policy for myself. So gcloud functions add IAM policy, weird inflection there. So here I want the function name, IAM demo for recording. Yours would be different, right? Now I'm going to say -- member, and sorry for cutting things off here. That's even worse. Member equals service account. And then I'm just going to drop my service account ID in there. And role equals roles/cloud functions dot invoker. Okay, so again, I just typed this in. The receiving function is your cloud function name. Calling function identity is the ID of your service account. Error. Add IAM policy. Oh, I forgot something. Hey, gcloud functions add IAM policy binding. I forgot the dash binding. My mistake. So we see life is good, nothing too crazy here. And now, what I should see, I can close out of this. Let's trigger this again. Hey, guess what? It still doesn't work. Good. Anonymous people still don't have access to this particular cloud function. But if we go over to our micro instance, and I need to open an SSH session here. And this is my micro instance or my virtual machine instance tied to that particular service account. Let's go ahead and SSH into this thing. SSH. We get our SSH terminal window pop up. And while that is spinning up, there is one other thing we're going to have to do here. So if we want to actually access this thing, we are going to need a very specific curl command. So curl we've talked about in the past. That is a terminal program for basically just interacting with a web service. We're going to do the same thing here, but we're also going to add on a header tag for the authorization here. So once this is up, okay, here we go. Make this a wee bit smaller so I can type this thing out. So I need my cloud function URL, which I'm going to copy and paste here. So on curl, my cloud function -h authorization bearer, and then this gcloud auth print identity token. Close that, close that. And what this is going to do here is basically, this is going to send a header tag for the authorization. It's going to run a terminal command where this gcloud command is installed on your micro instance or your virtual machine instance already. If you wanted to do this locally, you would have to install gcloud, but here it's already pre-baked for us. Now I'm going to hit enter. And what this is doing is it is passing in our token for that service account. So there's our hello world CIS680 that we expect. If I did not include that authorization, oops, whoops, whoops, whoops. If I did not include that authorization, so curl just my function, again, we don't have permission. We have to pass that token. So just to kind of recap, this is one way to do authentication and authorization with a cloud function. You can do it locally. It is a pain in the butt to do it locally, so I'd recommend sticking inside the cloud ecosystem. But if you wanted to say run a local Python script or run a local Ruby or whatever, it's fine. You just have to go through a different process, and I'll put some links to help you along that path. Anyway, hope this was useful for all of you. See you next time.